In the dry heart of the African savanna, a lone white rhino stands motionless beneath the midday sun. From a distance, he looks like any other massive, armored, unshakable. Up close, the truth is different. His skin, thick as it is, has become a battlefield. Hundreds of ticks cling to every fold and crease behind the ears, along the neck, deep in the wrinkles where the front leg meets the shoulder. Some are small, freshly attached. Others are swollen, engorged after days of feeding undisturbed. He shifts his weight from leg to leg, an old habit that offers no real relief. His skin twitches involuntarily, small ripples running across his flank. As nerve endings react to parasites he cannot see and cannot reach. Flies circle constantly around raw patches near his eyes, drawn to moisture and irritation. This is a losing battle, and it has been for weeks. Unlike smaller animals, a rhino cannot groom itself the way a zebra or antelope might. There is no tongue long enough, no limb flexible enough to reach the base of his own horn or the deep folds of his own neck. He is, in a very real sense, trapped inside a body he cannot fully maintain alone. He walks toward a dry mud wallow. Lowers himself down and rolls, coating his hide in a thick layer of mud and dust. It helps slightly. Mud dries and cracks, sometimes taking a few ticks with it when it flakes away. But it is a temporary fix for a problem that keeps growing back. For now, there's no other option. He stands. He waits. He endures. High above the wallow, three small shapes cut through the sky. In tight, coordinated flight, not circling like vultures searching for death, but descending with purpose, like something already knows exactly where it's going. Three yellow-billed oxpeckers. They aren't strangers to this terrain. Rhinos across this stretch of savanna are a known resource to birds like these. And a body carrying this many ticks is, from the bird's perspective, an enormous and immediate meal. The first oxpecker lands on the rhino's shoulder, claws gripping instantly into the thick, cracked hide. The second follows seconds later, touching down near the base of the neck. The third circles once before, settling higher up, near the crown of the head. The rhino barely reacts. This isn't his first encounter with these birds. And some deep, evolved instinct tells him there's no threat here, only, potentially, relief. Three birds, one enormous body, and a job that, until a few seconds ago, seemed impossible for anything to solve. They don't waste time deciding where to start. Almost immediately, all three converge toward the same region, the head. The first oxpecker moves along the ridge of the rhino's skull, its slender yellow and red bill probing into the folds behind the eye socket. Ticks here are small but numerous, clustered where skin meets skin in narrow creases. too tight for the rhino's own defenses to reach. Peck, grip, swallow. The rhythm begins. The second bird works the opposite side of the head, mirroring the first almost perfectly. As though the two have done this before, which in all likelihood they have. Oxpeckers often return to the same host repeatedly, learning the exact geography of a familiar body. The third bird focuses on the base of the horn, one of the densest clusters on the entire animal. Ticks gather here because the skin is thin, the blood vessels close to the surface, and the rhino's own reach is at its absolute weakest one by one. The parasites disappear. What was, minutes ago, a visibly infested patch of skin around the eye and horn base begins to clear. The birds don't linger once an area is done. There's no reason to. The ticks there are gone, and 3 hungry birds have an entire rhino left to cover. Within several minutes, the head, one of the most sensitive and heavily infested areas, is visibly lighter. Not perfect, not completely spotless, but dramatically improved from where it started. The birds move on. They don't return to the head again. There's no need. All 3 birds shift toward the ears, folded, cartilage-ridged structures that create dozens of tiny hiding spots ticks favor above almost anywhere else on the body. The first oxpecker hops directly onto the outer rim of the ear, using its claws to grip the thin edge while it works its bill into the inner fold. The rhino's ear twitches sharply, an involuntary reflex, but the bird holds its position, adjusting rather than retreating. The second bird takes the opposite ear, working with the same rapid, practiced rhythm. The third, meanwhile, focuses on the base, where both ears meet the skull, a favorite ambush point for ticks that fall from higher up. This is delicate, precise work. Unlike the broader skin of the neck or shoulder, the ear offers little room for error. One wrong angle, and a bird risks losing its grip entirely on a structure that moves constantly. But 3 birds working in sync means more ground covered in less time, and fewer opportunities for ticks to simply relocate from one ear to the other mid-cleaning. Slowly, the twitching in the rhino's ears begins to ease. Fewer parasites means fewer irritation signals firing constantly through his nervous system. His head lowers slightly, no longer held in the tense, alert posture from earlier. The ears are done. The birds don't circle back. With the head and ears cleared, the 3 oxpeckers descend to the neck and shoulder region, a broader, flatter expanse of skin, but no less infested. Here, the birds spread out slightly, each claiming a different section, rather than working the same patch simultaneously. The first works the top ridge of the neck. The second moves along the shoulder blade. The third targets the deep fold, where the front leg connects to the body, one of the most tick-dense regions on the entire rhino. Second only to the areas around the ears. The pace here is faster, more mechanical. Larger, flatter skin means less precision navigation and more straightforward, repetitive extraction. Peck, grip, swallow. Move 3 inches. Repeat. Occasionally, the rhino shifts his weight, and all 3 birds adjust their footing in near unison. wings flaring briefly for balance before resuming without missing a beat. They've done this before. The choreography is almost second nature. Minute by minute, the neck and shoulders visibly change. Skin that was densely peppered with dark, swollen ticks becomes noticeably sparser, then largely clear. As with every region before it, once a patch is finished, none of the three birds returns to it. There's no reason. The ticks there are gone. An hour's worth of work still remains lower on the body. The belly presents a new challenge. Softer skin, an awkward underbody angle, and one of the highest concentrations of ticks on the rhino's entire frame. Parasites gather here in numbers precisely because this is the hardest place for the rhino to reach or disturb on his own. The first oxpecker drops low, gripping the loose skin near the rib cage with careful, deliberate claw placement. The second joins near the midsection, walking almost upside down along the curve of the belly. The third takes the rear section, closer to where the belly meets the hind legs. This is slower work. The angle is awkward even for birds built for exactly this kind of task. And the ticks here tend to be larger, more deeply embedded after weeks of undisturbed feeding. Each extraction takes a fraction of a second longer than those on the neck or head. But the birds don't stop. Peck, grip, pull, swallow, reposition. The belly, patch by patch, begins to clear. First near the rib cage, then the midsection, then finally the lower curve near the legs. By the time all three birds finish this section, the transformation is dramatic. What was once one of the most heavily infested areas on the rhino's entire body is now almost entirely clear. As always, none of the three birds return to recheck an area they've already finished. The legs offer a different kind of difficulty, narrow, uneven surfaces that shift constantly with every step the rhino takes. The first oxpecker lands on the front leg, near the knee joint, gripping tightly as the surface curves beneath its claws. The second moves to the opposite front leg, mirroring the position. The third, meanwhile, works its way toward the thicker skin of the hind leg, where ticks tend to cluster near the ankle and lower shin. Balance is the real obstacle here. Every time the rhino shifts his stance, the birds must instantly readjust, wings flaring for stability, claws digging in tighter. But the payoff is worth the difficulty. Leg ticks, left untreated, are often the ones that cause the most persistent irritation, since they sit directly over major muscle groups used with every single step. One leg at a time, the birds clear the clusters. Front left, front right, then the hind legs. Worked more quickly now as the birds fall into a practiced rhythm after nearly 15 minutes of continuous labor. The rhino's stance begins to change subtly, less shifting, less stomping. The nervous, constant movement of earlier settles into something calmer, steadier. The last major regions remain: the tail and the lowest section of the belly near the hind legs. An area often overlooked, but just as heavily infested as anywhere else on the body. The first oxpecker moves to the base of the tail, where ticks gather in the coarse hair and thick skin fold. The second joins nearby, working the same general area from a slightly different angle. The third drops to the lower belly, the final untouched patch on the entire rhino. The tail proves tricky, constant. Involuntary movement means the birds must time their pecks between swishes, waiting for brief stillness before striking. It's the slowest section yet. Not because the ticks are more numerous, but because the target itself refuses to stay still. Eventually, the birds adjust their strategy, working in short bursts synchronized with the tail's natural rhythm rather than fighting against it. Ticks disappear one by one, the same practiced pattern repeating for the final time today. The lower belly, meanwhile, clears more quickly familiar territory after the earlier belly work, just extended slightly further back along the body. By the end of this section, every major region of the rhino's body head, ears, neck, shoulders, belly, legs, tail, has been worked over by at least one of the three birds. Nothing has been double cleaned. Nothing has been missed. The three oxpeckers finally take a moment to rest, perched together along the rhino's back, feathers slightly puffed, chests rising and falling from over 20 minutes of near-continuous feeding. Below them, the rhino stands differently than he did at the start. His skin, once a landscape of dark, swollen parasites, is now largely bare, clear patches stretching from his head down to his legs and tail. The nervous twitching, the constant shifting, the low, irritated grunting, all of it has faded into something closer to stillness. He lowers his head slightly, an unmistakable sign of ease after what was, for him, a genuinely difficult stretch of days. The mud on his hide is mostly dried and cracked away during the cleaning, revealing skin that for the first time in a long while isn't fighting a losing battle against hundreds of unseen parasites. For the three oxpeckers, this wasn't an act of charity, it was a meal, one of the largest and most efficient they'll find all week. But the outcome, for the rhino, is real relief regardless of the bird's motivation. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, the three oxpeckers lift off together, disappearing toward another part of the reserve, perhaps another host, another body carrying its own hidden burden of parasites. The rhino remains alone again, but changed. Not permanently, ticks will return, climbing up from the grass in the days ahead, and this entire process will likely repeat itself before long. But for now, in this moment, the relief is real and complete. This is what the full picture of the oxpecker-rhino relationship actually looks like. Not a single dramatic peck, not one bird against an impossible task, but three working in coordinated rhythm, region by region, until an entire body that once suffered in silence finally gets to rest. In nature, help doesn't always arrive as one hero solving an entire crisis alone. Sometimes it takes exactly the right number of hands, or in this case, wings working together, one patch of skin at a time, until the whole story changes.